Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining today's ISG's webinar. Today, my colleague Christian Decker and I will be hosting the session on how to design a manufacturing operating model for the new normal. So if you have any questions during today's presentation, you can submit those via using the Ask a Question box on the left side of your screen. So today with me is Christian Decker. Christian, maybe just briefly introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. So welcome, everybody. Feel very humble to have you on board today and really driving an exchange. My name is Christian Decker. I'm partner at ISG, and I'm responsible for the smart manufacturing vertical for Europe. And yeah, keep shooting questions and make it an as interactive session as possible. Back to you, Daniel.
Perfect. Thanks, Christian. So I'm Daniel Gerster. I'm a solutioning director with ISG in EMEA, and also working intensively with Christian and his colleagues in topics related to manufacturing. So what we will do in this webinar today, so we will basically discuss challenges and, of course, most important, a way forward on the operating model for a new normal. We will give a very short introduction just to basically set the stage on what we are talking about. We will then have an initial discussion of first questions. As already mentioned, we are really looking forward to your questions, so don't hesitate to post them in the chat. And then we will dig a little bit more into detail on the single elements of a new manufacturing operating model, because we are really convinced from ISG perspective that those topics will play a very important role and will become really game-changing for manufacturing companies. So you might asking yourself the question, why are we really stressing this topic related to manufacturing? So if we are looking across industries, there is basically a pretty clear rationale for this. So manufacturing is basically the industry that is most affected from almost all industries related to those effects of the new normal, like the post-pandemic situation. So it's even more affected than healthcare, for example, or also even more affected than transport industry, which is, when I saw those figures, and it's just a recent survey from fall last year, a representative survey among 449 managers across industries. I was really surprised when seeing those figures, that even if you take into account the tremendous changes we have seen with hospitals, for example, or in the transportation industry with aircrafts on ground, that manufacturing even is more impacted just from a worker's perspective on the daily routine. So this is basically the reason why we really put the focus on topics related to manufacturing. I think one topic is really important, and Christian, I'm sure we will discuss this later more in detail. Those topics are not really new. I mean, digital transformation has been there since at least 5 years, probably for the pioneers even longer than 10 years when the initial journey started. All those things we know about new digital technologies allowing to design new digital products and services, a new asset-light market entrants, basically disrupting incumbents, and all those volatile and uncertain market situations. I mean, this is there for quite some time, so it's certainly nothing new. And then basically almost exactly 1 year ago, we had this, well, don't want to say game changer, but the thing nobody expected, the pandemic situation. And this more or less served like a catalyst. So basically the topics that already started from a transformation perspective became even more fueled by the situation we were suddenly faced, distance again matters. So the global connected world somehow got disrupted. we, especially at the beginning, had really the challenges related to the supply chains. The whole workplace topic got disrupted with now being almost entire workforce, at least related to services at home, contactless payment and remote works. All those topics suddenly really gained significant speed. So at the end of the day, it's basically, from our perspective, an acceleration of what we have seen before. The topic of resilience and agility really gained significant importance. And of course, like topics related to time complexity and ambiguity. So like really the question of timing of aspects maybe related to supply chain really significantly increased in importance. Why do we stress this topic? So we just brought today like 2 quick case studies. One is on Etsy. It's a US-based e-commerce retailer, basically connecting individual crafters and artisans with consumers. And their CEO, back in April last year, he immediately realized the situation and saw like, hey, I mean, why not to really take advantage of that new situation and ask all those artisans to basically produce face masks and to design some nice crafts. I mean, this was at the beginning before FFP2 masks became mandatory. But just in Q2 last year, their sale really increased by 80%. I'm sure you're all familiar with Peloton, the US manufacturer of computer-linked fitness equipment. And of course, like with all those gyms closed, this was basically a no-brainer. I mean, I also had it like with many of my friends. They ordered like a workout bike, put it in their home to have the chance to do at least some workout if the gyms are closed and even if you're confronted with lockdowns and cannot leave your home. But what happened, even like quite some time ago, one year, it took them quite some time to realizing what was happening. And also like in relationship with the supply chain problems, they really struggled keeping up with the demand. And even like still today, if you look at the ratings, the feedback is somehow really surprising because you have disappointed customers waiting for their order, having no information on order status and all those topics. So it's really like the question of agility again, which is of course not new, but really got fueled with the situation and where we just see like speed and timing. I mean, we are often just saying like, well, you need to become more agile. I mean, that's too superficial because speed and agility is really related to a couple of factors. I mean, first, you need to understand what is happening. So something is changing in the market. This is recognition speed. Then you need to basically derive implications and decisions. And you actually also need to decide on that. And then most importantly, I mean, even the greatest insight doesn't help you if you are not able to execute in speed. And this is basically from our perspective, one of the key learnings. So you need to balance all those 3 dimensions really causing this challenge and try to really make the best of the situation. So maybe let's take the time and discuss like some first topics on this. Christian, ISG has conducted the so-called COVID-19 pulse check. I think it was in summer, fall last year, basically like on the state of the EMEA automotive and manufacturing industry. So 2 questions for you, like what are the most relevant insights of that study for our audience here? And I'm sure there are probably some kind of surprising things. So what was in there for you beyond the obvious where you thought like, well, I really haven't thought about it. So tell us a little bit about that study, please.
Daniel, so surprisingly, there was not really so much surprises. Let's say and start with this statement. Well, for sure, we got the feedback that 70% of the participants said we have a huge impact on our business model and we are at risk, which was quite interesting. But to be very frank and open, and you just mentioned it before, their business model has been at risk even already before. What became obvious, and you also stated this, COVID-19 did a good job in putting even more focus and need for speed and focus in accelerating those initiatives. And what we saw, the old formula of smart product plus smart service plus new or customer experience, that drives new business models. Of course, really, some business models were really forced to go this route down and even accelerate. But if you take the automotive industry, they have been in this disruption of business model even before, and they're really challenged and threatened to be degraded as a, let's say, asset platform vendor, as the Foxconn of some smart digital services and then solution offerers, without access to their customers, really, knowing only their cars. So what we saw in successful companies, that they did not have to change the business model. They just even accelerated the path they were following already in the beginning on their digital transformation, and did not do this only incrementally or with proof of concepts, but really had a clear agenda. And probably this is the most significant outcome. They had an impact on their organization. They did really also change their operating models, their organizational structures, become more verticalized, internal, breaking silos. So I would really say this was the key outcomes of the survey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Maybe like a point I'm also like struggling about when talking to my clients, or also like in my personal network. I mean, this entire situation is now lasting for 1 year. And like the ISG COVID-19 pulse change was like late summer, early fall last year. So this is now almost like half a year from now. So if you speak currently with your clients, I mean, what is your experience you made there? I mean, would you say it's basically the same like during the time of the study, or did you experience any significant changes where you said like, well, now it's going towards a completely different direction, or maybe also like now we are talking about some completely new challenges we haven't seen in the initial first phase of the lockdown?
Yeah, a good question, Daniel. And I would just start with a personal statement. I guess everybody, at least myself, is really accepting that this will last for a while, and did last for the last month. And I'm trying to really get over my frustration or my immediate threats, also my thinking of how do I have to keep what I have, rather than how do I learn how to live with this. Yeah. And I think the same happened on enterprise level. So while we saw in the initial phase, in the first wave, if you will, everybody focusing so much on cost efficiency, cost stop, budget stops, control financial performance, plus secure operational resilience and stability. I think the second wave pretty much showed how well, after all, topics like remote and work from home played out well. Working from home is not a hidden source of secret anymore, and everybody was kind of prepared to accept that there is social distancing. So what we see now is really going back and further working, besides still cost efficiency and operational resilience, really driving the large or at scale adoption of Industry 4.0 solutions and technology, and adopting it to their own organization to really be even better prepared and to drive forward the business model thinking and the further success. So I guess it's different between first and second wave. So also the state where we had our discussion and in our survey, and it's really moving up and speeding up now, only going away from point solutions to clear roadmaps, to focus on really data, and trying to get more maturity in this buzzword of Industry 4.0.
Yeah. But again, basically also like those challenges that have been there already before. I mean, Industry 4.0, it's not a new topic.
No.
That's basically that just continued to even become more important, but not really like entirely new aspects on that.
No, yeah. That's completely true, and I think that's also what is seen, that too long time it was not becoming so obvious that the digital transformation is more than just a hype or everybody is looking after. But the pandemic was really showing one thing, that it becomes really urgent to act now and to really think further, and not try to maintain and keep existing and heritage.
Yeah. Maybe like one further question on this. I know you are a specialist for manufacturing and automotive, but I'm sure when talking to your clients, you have also some insights to other industries. So do you currently also maybe like related to the current situation, do you observe any significant differences between the automotive manufacturing industry where you would say like, hey, but this topic is significantly significantly different in this industry compared to others, maybe like some things more critical? Any thoughts on this, Christian?
Yeah, I would say so. Manufacturing is heavy asset industry. It has a lot to do with physical assets, and used to work in plants and production and shop floors. And so same for automotive. There's not much different. And I guess the difference to other industries is that the challenge to get, with the help of new technologies, to make their products smart, to learn how to build a service environment, to get some more proximity to customers, to learn their needs, their requirements, and also to maintain the relations, to do support service, and not just engineer and produce and manufacture. That is probably the biggest challenge and also the biggest difference I see in other industries. If you talk retail, if you talk BFSI, they were always pretty much and pretty close with their clients and their needs, and we're really working on their core models. Whereas manufacturing has to really come up with new solutions, new services, and then new ideas, and new dimensions. And this drives us also. Again, this might be a much more challenge because it will require also organizational reconsiderations of operating models and breaking up silos that had been before there.
Yeah. I think maybe also one topic you already briefly touched is like, I mean, we of course do have the difference compared to other industries that we are talking at the end of the day about physical goods. So like if I'm purely in a services industry, it's easy to say like, hey, I'm going to the home office, I'm completely independent of anything. But if you have an assembly line, like a car manufacturer, I mean, you cannot say like, hey, let's take your assembly line back at home. And so you still have like this physical aspect of your products, and related to this also like the physical aspects of the supply chain. Because, and I think this was especially like in the first phase a real challenge to just secure the supply chain. And to really ensure that it's still working in times where some countries shut down borders, or I don't know, ships and containers didn't left harbors anymore, and all those topics. So that was probably, I would say, a new experience to all of us. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, and you're completely right. I think also that is not really new, but it became so urgent and so required that topics like real remote operations, zero touch, deployment, ramping up of devices or maintenance of devices. Really, the real ability to simulate and predict what is happening via dashboards and based on data, but not with human ears and knowledge and experience, but combine it, and also finding possibilities in autonomous operations, right from setting up new plants or beginning, thinking new with, let's say, human-less, more production plant right from the beginning, rather than optimizing later on existing processes with automation solutions. So that's and the technology has done a quite big topic here, and big increase in importance. But again, it's about the adaptability and the right from the beginning thinking in real virtual digital measurements.
Yeah, perfect. So I would suggest maybe let's move on a little bit. I'm already looking forward to some more questions and our continued discussion, but just to give you some more food for thought, maybe just some aspects on the operating model. So we just briefly touched the topic of supply chain. So especially those of you being active in the automotive industry, I assume are really aware of the current, well, so to say, challenges we have related to semiconductors. So just like when we researched this, I was really a little bit surprised finding this out. So just like it's just one case, I assume there's several other cases that are related to that. So if we just take, for example, Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company, TSMC, it's really one of the global big semiconductor manufacturers, of course, like Taiwan-based, among the top 3 from a global perspective. And this manufacturer, TSMC, this depends on basically a single Dutch supplier related to lithography systems, ASML. So basically, like if TSMC doesn't get their basically input from lithography systems, I mean, basically they cannot produce. And this supplying company ASML, they depend on just a single factory in Germany for the optical engine of the lithography systems. So basically, just imagine, I mean, even if we are just talking about, I don't know, electricity outages or natural catastrophes or whatsoever, or like strikes, something like that. If this single factory has a problem, basically like one of the top global manufacturers of semiconductors is basically not able to produce. And I think in the previous time, this wasn't really an issue because it worked really very well. But with all those disruptions we are currently seeing, people just become aware of this, and they also understand that there is a need to react to this. So really like to become resilient on the supply chain, and to address those topics, and maybe also like to become more independent of those big global interdependencies. So just like, what are the cornerstones of a new manufacturing operating model? Basically, in the sense of how could you increase agility and resilience? So it's basically 5 factors. And we really believe in the topic of distributed micro-manufacturing and digital fabrication. So this is basically the idea to bring manufacturing close to the location where the service is consumed and the product is consumed. B2B sharing, this is something we have already seen a little bit before, but will probably now really take off. Regenerativity, I mean, it's probably a little bit more than sustainability, but really like the whole topic of ecological footprint and the carbon footprint discussion to really decrease this, and not just like from the consumption of the products, but really through the entire production process. This is something we really see as a new trend that got significantly fueled also now with the pandemic situation. Ecosystems, a topic that was there before, but now significantly became more important, especially also in the combination with distributed micro-manufacturing, and of course, like the related leadership model. So if you just like briefly touch on those 5 cornerstones of a new manufacturing operating model. So just if we are talking about manufacturing, like micro-manufacturing, so basically for a long time it was really the paradigm that we need to look for economies of scale. I mean, we are all aware of the invention of the assembly line with Ford's Model T. So really like just-in-time production got significantly important, especially in the automotive industry, to really focus on the aspects of efficiency. This works well in cases where you have stability and reliability and where you can plan, but as soon as you have disruptions, this will be a real problem. So, and this is exactly what micro-manufacturing will address. So you will basically just have a look on how to bring manufacturing back to the point of consumption, to reduce global complexity and dependencies. And of course, also you can see this in the context of eco-friendliness, like basically produce in your village as long as you can do that. But really also to basically connect the consumers better with the products, and also to create some kind of identification here. So like one example, I know there are many more, it's just GE Appliances. They have a micro-manufacturing called First Build, and they engaged like with the local community, and with the outbreak of the pandemic situation, they immediately switched to like using 3D printers to print face shields, basically like for the community close to them. We have a similar case from a manufacturer in Italy, Isinova. Also, like it's another case. I will probably skip it for timing reasons, but it's also very interested. I mean, the common denominator, I would say, is like a close integration with the local community, which makes you more independent from global supply chains, and which also increases like the identification with the ecosystem partners, because they are basically more or less all your neighbors. I mean, the interesting part is like, if you are thinking about this and if you are taking this to scale, there are some challenges. I mean, often you are just coming like from a do-it-yourself way, and now you need to rapidly scale it, which is of course a challenge. And also like to ensure standards, maybe like related to health and security. This is of course much more difficult if you don't have like globalized, standardized processes and experienced providers. B2B sharing. I mean, you all know we have seen sharing for quite some time, especially in the B2C field, like Airbnb, Uber. These are the familiar cases. But we thought it's interesting to see that this is also taking place increasingly in the B2B field. So just to give some examples, like EM3 Agri Services, it's an Indian startup, basically like for giving farmers on-demand access to equipment, so they need not to purchase tractors, so they just rent it when they need it. Of course, increasing the utilization of the machines and significantly decreasing the cost for the farmers, so they have access to those tools, while they maybe like before even couldn't afford it. Even more interesting, like the next 2 examples. Until recently, I was thinking like, well, that's not so difficult to do it like with equipment, but you would never do this with your employees. And this is also like probably in a way where I need to rethink, because we already see like first companies actually starting to, well, so to say, exchange employees between the partner companies, like this French startup Vinitis. So it's an association of 360 French businesses, and they are basically sharing their full-time employees on a project basis among their member companies. So this offers also very nice alternative to the classical way, like, for example, hiring a contractor or consulting firm. And I think these are all forms we will see much more often in the future. Same like, for example, related to office space. So like this, or like other equipment stuff we see here with the Dutch startup Flow2. And I think these are all things that will become much more present in the future. I think the whole topic of regenerativity, sustainability, especially in the automotive industry, is really a very important topic, because also like from a customer perspective, the customers are really asking now for what's your ecosystem, what's your sustainability footprint, and what do you do basically to protect the environment. And I think also like especially the potential we see there regarding new jobs is just tremendous. And so this will be really a game changer, especially when taking into account like the changing preferences also from the consumers. Two examples which I really like from the automotive industry: Jaguar Land Rover, their so-called real car. It's basically like recycled aluminum car consisting of 75% recycled aluminum, which is a quite high percentage in my perspective. And Fiat Chrysler with a new Fiat Cinquecento, basically the plastic they use for the interior, it's not only recycled, but they have the gimmick. They said like, well, it's recycled sea plastic. So just like plastic collected in the sea and then recycled. So it's a good story, and you always feel good if you know that you removed some of the plastics while driving your new Fiat car on that. Of course, it's a gimmick.
I can see the smile in your face as I know what car you were driving, and it really. How does it feel like to sit on the sea plastic?
You don't realize it.
Okay,
you don't realize it, but you have a good feeling. I can promise, Christian, I really have a good feeling on that. I have to agree. It's a gimmick to some extent. Yeah. Perfect.
Sorry. Continue.
No problem at all. We have some more cases on circular business models. I mean, they are probably a little bit more serious one than the one before. But for example, without going into detail, Mezzo, I like this one because they basically included a transformation of the business model, saying like the customer is paying for output and not for input. So like, for example, cost per ton contract, stuff like this, really interesting aspect. The second one, ABB with Stena Recycling. I think all those kinds of corporations, we will see much more in the future. So very, very interesting from that side as well. And maybe just one brief comment on the Volvo construction equipment topic. And this is the thing I really like. So you see that basically eco-friendliness and regenerativity goes hand in hand with cost optimization. So like in that case, electrification together with basically like autonomous driving of machines and trucks, like in this construction plant, really led to a significant reduction of energy cost, like 70%. And in consequence, 25% reduction in total operating costs. So you probably would do this not only from a sustainability perspective, but just from a cost reduction perspective. And this is, in my perspective, the way we should think about those topics and to really combine the benefits of those things. Digital ecosystems, we have seen that before, especially in the automotive industry, that this is already for quite some time. I mean, this story even became more important in my perspective. And I think the nice thing is there is now a number of studies out there in the market. We quoted one here from the colleagues from MIT Sloan, and they really did the math on this, basically saying like companies that are ecosystem drivers and basically became engaged in establishing an ecosystem in their industry, they have an increased revenue growth of approximately like 27 percentage point higher than the industry revenue, than the industry average. So there is a clear rationale for doing this, and not just because it's fancy or trendy, but just like from an economic perspective, there's a clear rationale for why you should engage in ecosystems and why we shouldn't walk alone. So I also remember many projects Christian and myself have been involved, maybe at a little bit early point in time, but at the end of the day, this is coming exactly back to that point. And just like if we are looking to Asia, so just like one case here from China, I assume most of us are familiar with the huge success story of Ping An. But basically, like what they have done there with one product, the so-called Good Doctor platform, basically just establishing an open platform for 24/7 one-stop health services shopping, and basically connecting patients with hospitals, pharmacies, and doctors to provide basically services there. I mean, that's really very, very encouraging. One more recent example on ecosystems, since we are talking about this strange pandemic, I was really satisfied when seeing this. So digging a little bit more into the story of how all those vaccines got developed. So, I mean, since Christian and myself are Germany-based, we are, of course, looking to the German startup BioNTech, which together with Pfizer took basically like the first COVID-19 vaccine really to the market, and with really like excellent reputation and also great test results we now see from Israel. I don't want to repeat this. I mean, the internet is full of this, and whoever has seen the DLD just a couple of weeks ago, there was also like lots of media on this. But what is interesting for me in this, I mean, it's a small startup. They had like at the point one year ago, this were like less than 50 employees. So a small startup doing research on vaccines for cancer. They could never do this alone. So they really managed to establish an ecosystem of partners for the development of this vaccine, and especially also like for the production and the very complex logistics behind it. I mean, the BioNTech vaccine is one of those that needs to be transported with a very low temperature. So like it really includes a sophisticated supply chain. And this is really something that only works if you have a reliable ecosystem. Last topic, leadership model. I mean, everything related to decentralized decision making will become, of course, much more important when we are talking about this distributed micromanufacturing. I wouldn't say there is a right or wrong. So depending on your footprint of whether you have a strong global culture or strong local culture, you just basically should have a look on how to get the best of both worlds. So basically, to wrap it up before we jump into the discussion and the next round of questions, from an ISG perspective, it's really like those four things. It's regionalization, so become aware of where you are, what are your neighbors, and how you could engage with your community and maybe like leverage those strengths and also increase proximity to your customers. I think this will not work in all cases, but it's definitely something that should be considered and that really got fueled with this pandemic situation. Resilience was there before, but now really became important, especially related to production and supply chain topics. So like, so to say, prepare for the unplannable. And companies that succeeded in doing this are now in a much better position than others. Rethink scale and product mix. Very important topic, closely related to this distributed micro-manufacturing. Really like talking about things like a focus factory approach, leader, challenger factories. I mean, there are many ideas on how to address this. And last but not least, I mean, just if we go back for a second to this BioNTech case, I mean, it's really the story of agility and boldness. I mean, they said like, hey guys, we have no clue about this new virus, like nobody has, but we have competency in developing vaccine from our year-long research related to cancer. So why not to take this knowledge and to try to find a vaccine also like for this SARS-CoV-2 topic. And then, of course, like being bold. Yes, I mean, we have seen it. It's just like a small German startup is now probably known in more or less like almost all countries of the world. And it's a story which is just like less than 1 year old. So not only like in the foundation of the Silicon Valley, stories like that happened. I mean, this also happened in 2020 and 2021. So my perspective, really, really encouraging. I have now talked for quite some time. I'm really looking forward to the discussion, but I will really ensure that I will not forget to inform you about our next event going into more detail on manufacturing. It's the ISG Tech Exchange taking place on April 13th to 14th. Of course, as you know, with us always in these challenging times virtual, but therefore across the globe and allowing participation for time zone US and Europe. So we will go like on those 2 days much more in detail with many case studies also from clients where ISG is working on. And I've already seen the program, and it's very encouraging. And so if you are interested in this, so really try to free up your calendar and attend to this event. If you cannot attend the entire event, just maybe have a look at the sessions that are most relevant for you. Good.
Yeah. Let's move over, Daniel, to questions, and let's try to get this one before we. I just received one question. So thanks, Federico. So the question is, could you explain more regenerative brands? Daniel, I hope you can help me out here. I'm not sure I did really well completely understand. Could you explain more regenerative brands? So you want to take on this, or should we ask for add-on clarification what is meant here? You have an idea?
Well, I would understand the question. Well, I'll interpret it in the way I would like to understand it. Let's put it like this. And dear audience, please correct me if I'm doing wrong. So, and then we will of course correct this. I probably would formulate it like this. Is this a new topic, or what's maybe also like the difference between regenerativity and sustainability? Like my understanding, and Christian, I would be interesting about your view on this, but also looking, if I'm looking at friends of mine, my perception is like with this new situation and with people being back at home, they have time to consider about things. So they started, for example, like, why do I eat those junk food and what is in there? And maybe now, since I have now some time for cooking, let's take care about the ingredients. So we have this, my perspective, related to B2C products, like especially the foods industry. But, and I think this is where the question is related to, we have it also related in the B2B context, and also related to, like, for example, cars, and also like industrial goods and machines, because clients are really taking care of this. And I just remember, it's also, this is like quite some time before the pandemic situation, but for example, the airline from Hong Kong, Cathay Pacific, they started, like, I think it's more than 5 years ago, to take out aircrafts with more than 2 engines out of service, just from an ecological perspective, because consumers and guests are just taking care of that. Christian, do you have a view on this, or maybe like you understand it?
Yeah, just trying to add on some few thoughts, if that was the right track here. And Federico, please keep going, questioning if we missed it there. But I think we're just on the edge of really exploring what this can do and can become an own industry on itself that deals really with those topics, and the importance. And probably there's also some let's say more emotional impact on this, as people having really time to consider what's happening in this world, in this nature, that the topic of take care and save our planet and do the best you can, and it is the same. We are all the same on the same planet, and COVID doesn't take care of any borders. That this really will drive more and more brand solutions, impacts, and if not at all, an whole industry and a lot of employment in the future.
Yeah. I think we see it, for example, in the automotive industry related to electric cars. I mean, again, from my personal field, but Christian, if you would have asked me 1 year ago, Daniel, could you imagine that you for yourself buy a battery-powered electric car, so not a hybrid one, just in a battery electric vehicle in the year 2020? 1 year ago, I clearly, without any doubt, would have answered with straight no. But it came differently. And if you just, I don't know, maybe this is a specific situation in Germany, but if we are just looking about the number of registrations of electric cars, what happened in Germany there by the end of the last year, I mean, something really changed. And it's not only because it's fancy or because you have like a tax incentive. I think people really, like with this pandemic situation, started to rethink about those topics and change their behavior.
Yeah, and I also think the maturity and the usage increased heavily, and also the choice. I would say I agree on a one perception or permission. If there would have been the car you were now ordering already a year before, you would have considered even more closely, I would say, even before 1 year, if it had been your car. But that's a different topic and a very emotional topic as well. So let's not go down there. Let's try to open up some more questions, Daniel. What still do we have? let me probably reflect a little bit on what you said with cornerstones and bring some different topics and thoughts onto this. While you pointed out the 5 key topics already, but let's say before I come to that overall changing the way of command control behavior before to a more collaborative, open platform thinking, co-development thinking. Actually, there is enough examples, and I'm coming to that point. But what I see more and more, even from those clients we are in steady connect and contact with the procurement organizations, they start really to recognize. So the good old times of a strong procurement dictating and having clear transparency and forcing providers to the edge of financial performance is over because of lack of skills, importance of resiliency and quality, enough alternatives for scarce resources to choose on the supplier side for their partners. And I think there's a really shift in power from a more buyer markets to a supplier market in several actions. You mentioned the semiconductor topic. This is one of the greatest examples what's happening here, and that is driving now the new behavior and fueling as one aspect those new partnerships we see cross industry or within the same industry, breaking up of silos and so-called gold nuggets and core differentiating factors that are not really one, and now really collaborating. Volkswagen, AWS, and Siemens have built the industrial cloud, the IoT platform. BMW, Microsoft, and ZF calling it an open manufacturing platform. So it's about share data, but also commercially share investments. This all is so really expensive and huge investment, and having the pressure of decreasing revenues and margins due to the pandemic, but at the same time the pressure to drive forward and innovate and get the disadvantage in business models and the new adoption of technology to business within business context, the usage of data and the smart services and smart solutions. That's really driving the behavior, I would say, and your cornerstones you were pointing out before.
Yeah. So maybe like we have not that much time anymore left, but maybe like one or two questions should be fine. Yeah. I mean, you already talk quite intensively about like current topics with your clients, so giving me the feeling that this is not too far in the future, those topics we just have presented. But since I'm knowing that you're primarily working like really in the enterprise segment, like with large customers and large corporations, do you perceive like trends like this micro manufacturing? I mean, which is of course not taking place for like really multi-million companies, but do you already see some trends like this, maybe with some small MVPs or projects? Or would you say like, hey Daniel, this is nice that you included it in the slide deck, but that's probably too idealistic, or it's just like for small startups but not for the enterprise segment? Do you have some thoughts on that maybe?
Yeah, I see at least the following. I would first of all say I don't see it yet at scale. But I see at scale the consideration of topics like reshoring, resourcing, the paradigm of high mix, low volume, focused production. I see a lot of bringing back key skills after they have been identified and bringing them back to be independent in a way. I see more and more adoptions of technology within those contexts. Let's take digital twin on the entire life cycle of a supply chain. That helps tremendously to reconsider and rethink how support is done, how operations are done in huge plants. So technology finds a real nice adoption now. Another example probably would be AR, VR for typical maintenance tasks. So the so-called connected workers. Do I see this at scale and in a manner that I would say that's a standardized, commoditized service that is describable, manageable, benchmarkable? There's a market for this. I think it's starting. Let's probably think of IoT differently as everybody is having it at the moment spread across the enterprise in multiple use cases, proof of concept, but unstoppable, increasingly in volume. So immediately, and that's the interesting take on this, the requirement for manage those topics, get it secure, get it accessible. This is all known dimensions, from a classic standard workplace, if you will. So now take this to the next level, connect with, and let IT and OT connect, which is one of the biggest challenges of those CIOs of those days. But really trying to leverage their own knowledge of IT and combine it with domain knowledge of OT responsibles. And in the end, use the patterns of scalability, ecosystem, service solutioning, and then provisioning, and get a grip on those increasingly growing IoT devices that have the same challenges, like in the end, a workplace which has been there before, which is not affected additionally by the COVID pandemic, but it still accelerates. So probably some takes on this one.
Yeah, would fully agree with this view. I mean, of course, not everything we have seen here today is already reality in large scale, but I would fully agree with you, Christian. It will come. It's just a question of time. And as always, those companies that start to engage there early and that have a first mover advantage, they will take their share. And as we have seen it, like with the ecosystem story, there are clear financial benefits if you are doing this and if you're doing this early. And I think this is also true, like for the aspects of the new manufacturing operating model. So I would really recommend you, if you haven't done so far, to think towards that direction. I mean, there's many material out there in the market, also like many publications on this. I mean, those topics are really omnipresent, and of course, as I've already mentioned, we will go a little bit more into detail with case studies, with real life client examples on the ISG Tech Exchange Smart Manufacturing in April. So unfortunately, time is almost over. I would say that wraps up our discussion. So really thanks for attending the ISG Smart Talk, and Christian, thanks for the really encouraging discussion. It could go on for hours, but not today. Maybe like hopefully on another day, or latest on the Tech Exchange.
Right.
For the audience, we will follow up with a link to replay it, and also like some additional information. So take care, everybody. Stay safe and healthy. Make the best of the home office. And Christian, the final words are with you, I would say.
Yeah, no, meeting you guys all virtually or someday in physics will be a pleasure for me on the events, on your events, whenever occasion. And Daniel, the next time we will meet, hopefully can have some Bavarian beverage with us, and we can really physical enjoy. And let's continue.
Perfect, we will certainly do.
Thanks,
okay. Many thanks.